The organizations that succeed, what makes them special? The organizations that are winning today, what makes them different? What are their cultural aspects? What are their strategic views? How are they organized, and how do they think differently? I'd like to explore that. Many of them have an absolute obsession with their customers. Amazon, Jeff Bezos constantly talks about how the day Amazon loses its focus on its current customers is the day it loses its edge. So they're absolutely obsessed with the experience of the customer. Google, focus on the user and all else will follow. Apple, truly understand your customer needs. What's the opposite of that? It's organization centricity. It's the older models are focused internally. They're focused on hierarchies. They're focused on departments. They're focused on internal processes. The new models, the models that are succeeding today, are very much focused outwards around their customers. Facebook, most customer empathetic company in the world. Zappos, who sells shoes, provide best customer service possible. Slack, make work simpler, more pleasant, more productive. Slack were the fastest growing IT company in the world. They reached $1 billion in valuation faster than Microsoft, faster than Google, because they actually make work simpler and easier within organizations. So these are the models that are working. They look outwards and they found their strategies within the world of their customers. And they measure success based on the success of their customers. And they have a current customer obsession rather than a potential customer obsession. A lot of the old model organizations, they're focused on promises to new customers, whereas the really successful companies today are focused on managing the experience of their current customer base. That's what Amazon does. That's what Google does. That's what Slack does. Slack only hired a sales rep 12 months ago because the people who sell for Slack are the people who use the tools. The people who say, this is a good tool to use, and they tell their friends. This is what social media is. Social media is not a conversation between customers and organizations. It's a conversation between customers and customers, between people and people. So the structure and the model of the new organizations, they're very much focused outwards. Where is value in organization, or company value, or organizational value? Value has moved away very much from the physical assets towards the intangible or the digital assets. If you went back to 1975, your buildings, your beautiful building here is an important asset. But as a percentage of the value of Google, or a percentage of the value of Apple, their physical assets are fractional, maybe 1% of their overall value. The value has moved towards intangible assets. And what are intangible assets? They are things like the brand, but equally the customer base is an intangible asset, an intellectual property. And there's been a shift there, a movement away from brand value towards customer value. People all over the world are losing faith. They're losing faith in religions. They're losing faith in politicians. They're losing faith in brands. People are more and more skeptical today than they have ever been. And there's a shift away from this belief in the brand towards belief in the use of the environment. And it is the current customer base that is increasingly the largest element of an organization's value today. There's a shift in trust. So back around 2000, people were much more trusting in organizations and in experts. People don't trust experts anymore, whether it's in the UK elections or the US elections or economics. I mean, the experts are not predicting the future nearly as well as they used to. Maybe they never predicted it very well, but they certainly today, listening to experts, if you listen to experts about how the UK election was going to go, they would have all said there was going to be a huge Conservative majority because the experts were watching the BBC. They weren't watching social media where the actual changes were occurring actually on the ground. So there's a significant shift away from me and my brands or me and my experts to me and my friends. Decisions are more and more made at a localized community peer network based environment today. People make decisions based on how their friends are using the things or how their peers are using the things rather than looking upwards in the process. So there's a lot of change that's happening. And there's a lot of disloyalty. Accenture estimate that last year $1.6 trillion occurred in switching. So people are switching brands like they've never switched before. They're switching parties, they're switching allegiances. This sense of people being locked in to institutional power or saying, oh, I've always dealt with this company, etc., that is disappearing in huge parts of the world as they become cynical towards politicians, towards all sorts of figures within societies. So we have customers becoming much, much more powerful, much, much more independent. And that's the reason why the modern organizations have to organize around the customer rather than the historical deferential customer that would organize their lives around the organization. So the new organizations are seeing this and they're focusing very much on making life easier for their customers and particularly their current customers. So the drivers of customer obsession, what are the characteristics of a culture that is obsessed with its current customers? They are empathetic. So they're constantly looking outwards, constantly observing behavior in the external environment to see, is this what is working for the customer? Is this what the customer likes? They are flexible and adaptable. In a complex world, it is extremely difficult to predict the future. So in highly complex, unpredictable environments, you need to increase flexibility and increase adaptability. So these modern organizations are highly adaptable and flexible. They really respond to feedback from their environment and are able to change to that new feedback and adapt and move forwards. They're also driven by simplicity. Driven by a simplicity to focus on making it easier and faster for people to do things. In 2000, Amazon was able to deliver packages in a week, and people thought that was good. By 2010, it was 2 days to deliver packages. In many cities in the United States, Amazon can deliver to you within an hour. Today, 1 hour. How can you compete with Amazon when they can deliver to you within an hour? So this year, Amazon will get 52% of all new commerce in the United States. And all the other retailers will get the other 48% because they are relentlessly focused on making it faster and easier for people to do things. And trust. How do you build trust in a world where trust is in decline and certainly institutional trust is in decline? So let's have a quick look at these issues around empathy. What is the opposite of empathy? This is the opposite of empathy. This is a Norwegian bank telling you what they want you to do, right? And this is what most organizations do. They're saying, here's the products we want to sell to you. Here's the products we want you to buy. And here, for basically current customers, to log in, they have to click on a thing called NetBank. Now, the marketers in this bank said, let's do something unique. We want to make ourselves look different. Let's come up with a brand. Instead of calling it login, we'll call it NetBank, right, in the process. And of course, nobody could find out how to log in. They were getting constant calls about how to log in the process. And look at these ridiculous images that they put. I mean, this is for retirement, but that woman is not going to see retirement if that guy drives off with her arms up in the air. I mean, what are they laughing about? Everybody is laughing in these ridiculous pictures of organizations communicating outwards. Well, anyway, they got tremendously negative feedback from their customers year in, year out about your website is just for you. It's not for us. It's not focused on us. And they did something radical. They totally stripped away everything to do with them telling people stuff. And they says, here, do you want to log in? This is the homepage. This is their new homepage. Right? This is their homepage. It's focused on what people want to do. What did they do? They deleted 50% of their content, and visits to their products has gone up 500%. Help people do what they want to do, rather than you dictate what you want them to do, and you will be more successful. Make the customer successful, and you will be more successful within the environment. I talked about Slack. the fastest growing software company in history. What's the Slack culture? Every new employee does at least 2 full days on the support queue. So whether you're an engineer, whether you're a developer, you must work on support in Slack. And every week, designers and engineers do 1 hour per week, every week. Right? So they expose them to the actual experience of the customers using their product. Rather than leaving people in isolation and say, you design this stuff, you got to see the result of what you're designing. So great organization. Google do this as well. All their engineers must spend at least 1 day every 6 weeks out with their customers, observing the behavior, observing the consumption within the environment. Here's what a classical organization's page looks like. What the org wants you to do, the customer. What the org wants the customer to do. What the org wants the customer to do. That's how most websites are structured. And then there's a little piece at the top, maybe about what the customer wants to do. So no wonder customers are cynical. No wonder customers are skeptical within the environments. What's the result of all this production and messaging? This is the World Bank, an analysis of their policy reports. Basically, 1/3 of their policy reports are never downloaded. 1/3 of their policy reports are never downloaded. Nobody ever accesses them. You know, and that's the classical model of traditional organizations. They manage production, but they don't manage consumption. They have huge engines to produce stuff that nobody's interested in. Huge quantities of stuff. These are the old model thinkings. So flexibility. This is one of the first printed maps. When printing came out, it was a huge revolution in knowledge and sharing and stuff like that. This was a map printed in 1570. Before printing came out, it was very difficult to do mapping. And, you know, each one was done by hand, so there was errors in the maps. And it was very difficult to evolve a common consensus of what were the size of countries and the geographies and the various issues. But within 28 years, the first map was published in 1570, right? And by 1598, there were 28 editions. So basically, there was a new edition every year of the map because of printing, right? Because it allowed to send hundreds of copies around the world to get other cartographers to give feedback, say from Ireland, saying, oh, Ireland should be bigger, but they didn't listen to that one piece of feedback. But they got great feedback and they evolved. Mapping progressed more in these 28 years than it had progressed in the previous 500 years when they were dealing with handwriting and hand drawing. Right. Now, the thing is, that was 1570. We are now in 2017, and I've never met an organization more print-focused than ADB. Now, you would be a tremendously innovative, forward-looking organization back in 1570. Right. But today, you are so way off the mark. Right. You are so, back in 1570, you'd be modern. But in 2017, you are not a modern organization. You are such an embedded print culture. And such a hierarchical. I have never come across an organization with as many acronyms, with such a division, such a lack of cross-disciplinary collaboration, with a lack of a vision across the organization. It seems there's all these visions within silos, and that you're almost competing against yourselves as an organization. You really need to change, right? You really need to change. Right. And you can't, and it's the younger generation, you know, to drive this change. What you follow, you don't have a digital strategy, you have a digitizing strategy. You digitize print and you put it up. Right. We did a study of your intranet, 600 staff. They cannot find anything. Your search is beyond appalling. Extraordinarily bad. And even when they find stuff, most of it is out of date. Because nobody manages it. Nobody looks at it. You don't have anybody. You've got about 3,000 people. There's many studies that show if you need one full-time person per 1,000 to manage an internal intranet? You've nobody. There's nobody managing your internal system, right? You've these amazing, beautiful building, yet if you reflected your digital world physically, there'd be a big smelly dump over there of food that hasn't been taken away in 6 months. Somebody would be sleeping rough over there. There'd be a smell coming in from the door. The windows would be broken. Those flowers, wouldn't have been changed in 7 years. Your digital environment is appalling. Right? You really need to make the change. Right? You really need to make, and this is coming back from staff. I'm trying to be the voice of your staff because the staff are so disappointed in what they are getting within ADB. So hopefully we're going to see some change. If you look at Google today, right? Google changes 28 times a day, right? Over 28 years, Google changes its maps 28 times a day. If you give feedback to Google at 2 o'clock, and says, you missed a roundabout in your mapping, they will triangulate that data with other data and see, is that actually true? And by 2:20, they will have drawn in that new roundabout. They have full-time people, 24 hours a day, waiting for feedback, waiting to register the feedback. Google Mapping is changing by the hour based on feedback from its environment. That's why it's a success. That's why it's leading the world within the environment. So, simplicity. It's all about time. Relentless focus on time. Speed, get it done quickly. This was HSBC, right? Big, complicated form. Two inquiries a week, right? They simplified the form. They're getting 180 inquiries a week. Make it simpler, you make it better. Strip, make it simpler, make it easier. Yeah, they were getting stupid inquiries. But they did 20 million in new revenue off the simplified form, and they had done less than $1 million revenue a quarter on the older form. So, simplicity, trust. There's a massive decline in trust around the world. So how do you create trust? Why do we trust Uber? Why do we trust Airbnb? Why do we allow strangers stay in our house? Trust has moved to the network. It is basically moderated based on what people, again, coming back to the concept of the current customer. What do current customers, we have approved, I've written in this. We don't trust Uber, the company. We trust people who use Uber. So trust has moved to use. Trust in the world has moved to use. Therefore, you measure use. You measure consumption of what you do rather than production of what you do. If you want to change your culture, change your metrics. Move outwards. Get into the world of people who use you, whether they are your employees or whether they are your external customers, and measure use. So in a customer obsession, you wrap it by what people are trying to do, what they're trying to use. We call those the top tasks. This is how you measure flexibility, simplicity, trust, and empathy in the process. And how do you measure these top tasks? You measure, are they successful? How long is it taking them? Focus on what do people want to do? Are they successful? How long it's taking them? And at every step in the way, you look for evidence. Evidence rather than opinion. Evidence of use. Look outwards. Become more flexible, become more customer-focused, get away from the organizational thinking and the silo-based thinking and the internal-based thinking. You have more than the capabilities to do this. But the change, if you implement Office 365 and SharePoint without changing your culture, I guarantee you, you will make things worse. You will move from small diggers to big diggers of throwing stuff into an unstructured environment. You really need to manage this environment better, and you need to manage the consumption of the environment rather than the production of the environment. Thank you.